Welcome to Creating Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Paige. This is an inspirational podcast where guests come on and share their real life stories. They discuss their struggles, hardships, and traumas. They also discuss how those encounters have helped them change, grow, and the healing process they've experienced. They share where they are today in hopes of helping someone else who could be going through the same or similar situations. So join me as we inspire others weekly to become the best versions of themselves. Hey y'all, welcome into another episode of Creating Yourself podcast with me, your host Paige. Today I am super honored to have on one of my favorite true crime podcasters. She is Holly from Crime of Holly. She's a true crime advocate, and her tagline that I love is she is a voice for the voiceless. Hey Holly, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on. Listen, I have listened to your podcast when it was Crimeaholics back in 2021 is when I found you. And anybody that listens to my show or my other podcast knows that I'm a huge true crime fan. So I listen to a ton of true crime podcasts, true crime shows. I followed you on Instagram for a long time, which I feel like when you say that, it sounds kind of like creepy, but you know, when it's a true crime podcast, like I just love that. And I've commented on some of your posts on there, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to like shoot my shot and ask her to be on the podcast, you know? And I did, and you responded and you were like, absolutely. And I was like, wait, what? I'm sorry. Did she just say yes? I like fangirled for a hot second, and then I was like, oh my God, like this is happening. So I'm super honored to have you on. And just like hearing your voice for so long, and then like you jump on and I like hear your voice. It's like, is this real life right now?
Oh, you're so sweet. Oh my gosh.
It's so awesome. But yeah, so like I said, I started listening to you back in like 2021. I feel like one of the first episodes I ever listened to was the Chance Engelbert. He is one that has just stuck with me for so long. Like it's so bizarre, that whole case. I just can't wrap my head around it. So
that's the case for me that like I think about it, I want to say probably every day.
Yeah.
If not like every other day. I think about Chance all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one that sticks with me too. For some reason, it's so weird. Like, where did he go?
I mean, I have my theories, but I try and keep my opinions to myself because I don't want to sway anybody's opinions on that. But I think a lot of people lean towards one way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just so bizarre. Like that one is one I can't get over. And then here recently, the Idaho 4, like that one's with me a lot too, you know. But yeah, so I'll let you get started and kind of tell us about you, where you're from, and what got you so interested in true crime.
Okay, so I'm Holly, like you said. I'm 35 years old. I'm originally from Salem, Oregon, but my husband is active duty Air Force. And so currently we live in Las Vegas, Nevada, which is so hot. I'm not a hot heat person. Like I hate it, but we've been here for over 3 years. So it is what it is. But, so you said I had a previous podcast called Crimeaholics. I got started with that with my old, co-host. Her and I ended up kind of going separate ways. She moved to Tennessee. I moved to Nevada, and we just decided that, you know, we're going to put it into that. And so I started my new one, Crime with Holly. So thank you for listening to that and continuing to follow me. But true crime is something that I've always been extremely passionate about. I started watching things very young. John Benet Ramsey's case was the case that I think like probably really hooked me. And I was probably like 8 or 9, I think, when that happened, maybe even younger when that happened. And I've just started watching things ever since. In high school, I had a classmate that her sister was abducted and murdered along with her friend. So I feel like it's always been something that I've just like kind of gravitated towards.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the biggest reason why I'm just, I don't want to say obsessed, because there's like real people behind, you know, these stories, and they're not just stories, they're real lives. I think it's a major learning opportunity. It's awareness that there's so much evil and darkness in this world. We get so wrapped up in our lives and the happy things that are going on around us, and we often forget about like the terrible things that are happening outside of our bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I think I've enjoyed and found like a serious passion in covering cases, not only on my podcast, but if you follow me on TikTok, like I do a lot of stories over there, and just kind of reminding people that you can't let your guard down. You always have to be aware of things. My poor kids, they're so sick of me. I'm like, nope, you can't ride your bike less than a mile to school because we live really close to the interstate and you never know what's going to happen. And like, my kids probably are so sick of me, but I hope someday down the road when they become parents themselves that they look at it and are like, okay, my mom was just like doing whatever she could to protect me. And like my personal story, and I wouldn't say that this is my reason behind wanting to cover cases, but I do feel like it's almost my reason to keep going, is I am actually a victim of sexual assault. My sister's husband is actually the person that assaulted me when I was 12, 13, 14 years old. And so like I was exposed to grooming that I didn't realize was happening. And so when I have the opportunity to kind of tell facts, if you will, or red flags of things that are grooming in my podcast, I do that because, you know, like I didn't realize what I was going through. And that might have someone out there who's listening who have been through it, been like, oh my gosh, like that actually happened to me. And so that's another why, I guess, if you want to call it, that I continue sharing and doing what I can.
I'm kind of like that with my kids. Like I'm so hands off, laid back, go with the flow kind of mom. But when it comes to like being out in public and keeping them close, I'm very like, don't go too far, don't go over here, like, you know, those kind of things. 'Cause I actually live in what a lot of people wouldn't call like an interstate town. I have an interstate on both sides of my town. Like I have like I have two interstates that meet very close to my town. Two main interstates.
So a lot of people coming and going.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have one that runs north and south, and then one that runs east and west, and they meet literally about 25 miles west of where I live. So my town is what a lot of people like to call an interstate town.
Yeah.
And I grew up here, so I'm used to it. But we get a lot of, you know, out of towners, you know, foreign people that will pass through and those kind of things. So it's something that I'm constantly like, you can't just run off in Walmart and go look at one thing and while I'm over in the grocery section shopping. Like it's just something you can't do. And they're like, but why? My friends do it. And I'm like, well, maybe your friends don't watch Dateline every Friday night like I do.
No, they don't. Well, and even us as like women, and I mean, it happens to men too, but there's people that are out there. Let's see, it was my husband's first deployment here. So this is like 3 years ago. He had just left and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to Hobby Lobby. I'm going to, you know, find whatever I decide I want to buy because I can. My husband just left. I'm shopping because I'm depressed. And I'm in Hobby Lobby and I'm just doing my thing. And I realized that this guy, every time I turn around, he's there. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? He was wearing like a hoodie. He had a mask on because it was still kind of like the COVID time.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, you know, whatever. And every time I turned around, he was there. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go across the store. So I go across the store, I go down an aisle, and the next thing I know, I'm rounding the corner and he's down an aisle very close to me and he has his junk out and he's masturbating in public, following me around, which is people were like, oh, he's just, you know, enjoying himself, the view. And I'm like, no, this is like people will run up on people. They will finish on them, and like that's how they get their high. And I'm like, I am not about to be a victim today of this crap. And I panicked, like, and again, that's like another reason why I love doing this and bringing awareness to things, because when you're in that situation, you have no idea how you're going to react. And I am like embarrassed to say I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I froze. And I booked it across the store as fast as I could to find a male associate that I had seen working earlier. And I was like, listen, this dude is following me. He has his penis out. Like and so they like corralled me into the back of the store and they tried to find him, but he saw me go to this guy and he ended up booking it out the store. And so they made sure they escorted me out and like that I got in my car and drove away before they like left me alone. But it was just, you don't know what you're going to do in those kinds of situations. I can tell you all day long that I would yell, scream, cause a scene. But when you're put in that position, like you freeze. And so if my story telling someone about that can help them like know what to do or how to be prepared, like don't be like me, don't freeze.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't know what to do. Like, that's crazy.
It was insane. And like I said, every time I turned around, he was looking at me. And so I had been shopping for a while and I just was doing my thing. And he did kind of stand out to me, like, because he was a man by himself, not saying that men don't go to Hobby Lobby, but like, he was definitely by himself. Usually the men, they're there for a reason. They're not just like browsing the farmhouse decor. And he was definitely looking at the farmhouse decor, but and it blew my mind. But that's just another reminder, like you cannot put your guard down. You cannot be shopping at Hobby Lobby on a Wednesday at 12 o'clock and not be aware of your surroundings.
Yeah. It's very scary for women in this day and age. And you always have to keep your eye out. And that's what's scary. It's like men don't always understand what we have to deal with. And I'm constantly like, even when I'm walking to my car, in like a day like today, broad daylight, sunny, no clouds out, perfectly nice day. Like I have my keys almost like in between my fingers walking, so that if somebody comes up, I at least have some sort of quote unquote weapon, to like jab them with, to like anything. And it's just, oh God, I'm sorry that happened to you. Like, no,
I was a mess. I was crying on the phone to my husband. I was crying to the male associate. Like I couldn't even get the words out without crying. Like I was just like, I don't know what to do.
I'm sure.
It was wild. But you hear those stories online of like people getting followed at Target. Now, I guess Target, Hobby Lobby, and bookstores are like hot spots for people to do things like that. They know that a lot of times there's young women. Sometimes they're shopping in their, tight yoga pants, whatever. They're by themselves enjoying, their Starbucks while they browse. And I guess that makes them easy targets for creeps. But
that's crazy.
It was wild.
Yeah, see, we've had a lot of incidences in my Walmart here, because that's like our biggest store here is Walmart. Yeah. And with it being, like I said, an interstate town, that's something that we've had an issue with. We've actually had, there was I remember it being like a white pickup truck a couple of summers ago. I feel like during COVID. And it was at Walmart, and then it was across the street, and I remember there being multiple posts on a Facebook group here in town of people posting about it and seeing it. And I was just like, I feel like once the post started becoming like quote unquote viral here, we stopped seeing it. So I don't know if they saw that it was becoming a thing and they left town or what, but it's just crazy. Like I don't. And it's like you finally see something and you're like, okay, this isn't going to shock me when I see this. And then you see something and it's like, what?
Yeah.
It's just nuts. So also, I know you do the thing called Missing Mondays. So what kind of gave you the inspiration for that?
That started with the old podcast. And actually, it was, I don't know if you're familiar with Suzanne Morphew. Have you ever? She went missing on Mother's Day in Colorado. They ended up finding her remains not long ago, but she had gone missing, and it happened to be on a Monday. And I was like, you know what? Like, what if we do something called Missing Mondays? We can make them shorter episodes if need be, because sometimes the missing persons cases, they don't have a ton of information. And so I'm like, these can be kind of like a whipped up, kind of quick episode if need be. And then there was that Suzanne's was my first one, but my old co-host, she did there was a missing teenager and I can't even remember her name. She ended up running off with somebody. So it wasn't anything serious, but that's what we started with. Our very first Missing Monday was that case. And Vanessa Guillen also was another one that was very early on in our Missing Mondays, and people really gravitated towards it. Of course, you have people who say they don't like the missing persons episodes because they need closure, but at the end of the day, these are people that need to be found. And so that's what I have become probably the most passionate about, is missing persons cases. And when I was a senior in high school, I had to do like a end of year project kind of thing. And I was originally going to follow a lady that I knew and job shadow her, who worked for the missing and exploited children. And it didn't end up working out. So, I mean, this goes way back when I've always, again, been fascinated with missing.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is just, I couldn't imagine having a loved one go missing and literally have no answers. I think it would eat me alive. And so any amount of exposure, no matter how big or small your platform is, that can fall into the right, ears or eyes to hear it and know that they actually hold a piece of information. And so Missing Mondays was born, and I haven't had the opportunity to do a ton of Missing Mondays on my new platform, but it's definitely something that I think about often, and it's one that I plan to continue to do forever. And that's what I'm most known for on TikTok, is covering missing persons cases. My TikTok really blew up when I shared Chance Engelbert's case. And then I did live coverage of the Gabby Petito case. And I keep everything. My biggest goal with true crime is there's so much speculation out there. People are constantly throwing their theories and speculation, and theories and speculation can be fine and dandy sometimes, but a lot of times it's more hurtful than it is good. And so talking about theories, I think, is great, because it makes you think about things that maybe you didn't think about before. But with my platform, I tried really hard to stay to the facts. I'm human though. Like sometimes I did speculate, but I tried my hardest to stick to the facts with the Gabby Petito stuff and cover it like live as it was coming undone. And so everybody really enjoyed that too. So it just more missing people, I think, is important to continue sharing.
Yeah. I remember when Gabby went missing, your TikTok was one that I kept refreshing.
Yeah.
All the time, and was like, is there something new? Is there something new? Is there something new?
And people, they came to my page because they knew that I was going to give you the facts. I wasn't going to be like, oh, Teddy Joe from, Alabama thought they saw him here. It was like, okay, these are the facts. Like, there's potential sightings, but like, this is not definite, that he's here. There was the crazy video circulating around of a boat that
him on the boat. Yeah.
He went live on Instagram for 5 seconds. And I didn't feed into that, because it's like, you're having now people look in the ocean or the lakes or whatever when like there's, I don't know. So I tried to stick with the facts.
Yeah, I remember like I would go to your page multiple times a day. Like I would sit at my desk and be like, is there anything new?
Well, thank you.
I do. I remember that. And with that one, I think that one grabbed the nation so quickly and so like, I mean, I feel like dads were watching it, moms were watching it, siblings were watching it. Like this wasn't just like your true crime fans were watching it. Like every single person in the nation was watching that case. And I just, it was bizarre. It was crazy. The domestic violence side of it was hard to watch, and to see her sit in the back of that police car and kind of blame herself too was really sad. I remember watching that. I'm a domestic abuse survivor, so like watching that was so hard. I was like, this poor girl, like I just wanted to like jump through the screen and like give her a hug, and then watching the footage when they found the van, that couple that had the like the dash cam video when they saw the van. I remember like looking over in the woods, like are they over there somewhere? Like as they were driving, like it was crazy. I mean, I have my theories on that one and I don't want to say like conspiracy, but like I just have my thoughts on like what went down and how it happened.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know. I feel like you can't change my mind on how it happened.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess I'll just leave that off of
Yeah.
here. But I would love to ask you afterwards what you think of that. But like,
Definitely.
I don't know. It was just crazy. And like, then, you know, the parents go in and find where he was immediately. It's like,
that case was probably, I think, one of the biggest cases that I've watched unfold live as it was happening. And like you said, the whole world was wrapped up in what was going on. And I got asked, I've been in a couple documentaries for Gabby Petito, and I also was asked by, I think it was Washington Post. They emailed me asking me why I thought the nation was so wrapped up in this case. And I know a lot of people want to spin it because she's a white female, and I do believe that plays a part. But I also think a lot of it is that so many of us relate to Gabby in the sense that Gabby was on this mission to be an influencer and have this public presence online. And like myself included, like I would love to have my social media blow up, my Instagram blow up and have this incredible following and live that influencer lifestyle, if you will. And so I think we're so wrapped up in social media and everything going on right now in the world, and we live through what is happening in social media and these images of people online, that I think we all just really related to Gabby. And of course, being a white blonde female, that grabbed the attention as well. But I really think people were drawn into just who Gabby was and the fact that she was so relatable. And then, like you said, you know, the domestic violence, as that stuff started to come out and come to light, you know, once more, it shows people that one thing can look one way, but there's flags and things that, you know, that are out there that you can see that you might miss and realize like, oh my gosh, okay, I had someone that treated me like that. You know, so it's just definitely like a learning opportunity. And that's why, again, I love to put content out there because I think we all can learn from it all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think her being so like humble and sweet and just kind.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's what grabbed everybody is like, how could someone do something like this to her?
Yep.
You know, I don't think and I'm like you, I think, you know, the white blonde female definitely plays a part in it. But I think the fact that she was so sweet and so kind and she seemed
relatable.
So innocent. Yeah, and innocent and relatable. I mean, anybody can relate to that in some way, shape, form, or fashion. You know, so I think that was definitely part of it. You know, and I think it was just everybody wanted so badly to find her okay. And then when it didn't work out that way, it was like, ugh, really?
I know. It was so hard. It was so hard. Especially being, I have to say, it sounds stupid because obviously I'm not involved, but like it was mentally draining trying to keep up with it all. And because then I had people that I knew were relying on me for like accurate information. So I was like constantly up in the middle of the night checking online to see if there was more, you know, news or details. There were times where I was in bed and I'd be like scrolling and I'd be like, oh my gosh, there's an update. I got to get out of bed. And so like, I think some of the videos on TikTok, I'm like literally like have wet hair because I just taken a shower. I'm in like my pajama shirt, like just, but I do think that there was so much good that came from her case. And I hate to say that, you know, anything positive can come from someone's murder or someone going missing, but it really shed light on a lot of things, domestic violence, the way in which, you know, other missing persons cases, you know, do or don't get picked up by the media. So I don't know. Rest in peace, Gabby, because I feel so awful. And it's just crazy that we all literally watched it unfold. And it was just one thing after another. It was just crazy.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the same thing with the Idaho 4. You know,
yeah,
everybody has watched that completely unfold as it has happened. And of course, that one hasn't, you know, that one has kind of drawn out, you know, unlike hers did. Hers happened very quickly and fast and ended quick and fast because of what he did. to himself. But, with the Idaho 4 and Brian Koberger, and it's just crazy that both their names are Brian. Like, what are the freaking
right.
odds?
Right.
So weird, right?
These big cases, they're both Brian's. Mm-hmm.
I know, it's crazy. But with the Idaho 4, it's drawn out, and we're now, a year and a half, almost 2 years in.
Yeah.
And that case is just, I can't even keep up with it anymore.
I can't either. It's a lot.
So much stuff has happened. There's so many theories and so much like evidence. And there's one girl on TikTok. Her name is London something. She's got blonde hair. She is on it like all the time with the new details and stuff. And I'm like, girl, I don't know how you do it, because I can't even, like, I don't even know what's going on with that case right now, because I just can't keep up. It's crazy. But when it first happened, I remember, again, I'm on TikTok just refreshing constantly, looking for new things, because I was like, how can someone go in and do this to somebody? Not one person, not two person, but four.
I know, I think that's why, another reason why people are so drawn to that one too, because, and then with the one roommate being there and not hearing really anything, and it's just crazy. It's crazy.
I don't know how you feel about answering this, but I'll ask it, and then if you don't, we can cut it out.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. But how do you feel about them tearing the house down before, like, the trial even kind of got started?
Oh no, not after the trial, because there's times where juries want to do a full walkthrough.
Yep.
Nope, I don't like that at all. I mean, let the case completely be closed. It's not closed yet. You never know when you might. That's like when people get cremated, after certain things, and it's like you can't go back and see that, or look further into something that maybe there's a question about. Like, nope, leave it standing. I mean, for houses where, like, I'm in full support of the Watts home being torn down, which I think it's been bought by somebody. It's a beautiful home, and I hate to see it go to waste or whatever, but I'm for that. But once things are done and completed, so no, I keep that house up. Which, have they torn it down yet?
Yeah, they have.
They did? Okay.
Completely gone. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's one thing that I was like, why are you all doing? And there's so many people that were for it.
I get the reason for it.
I get the reason, 100%.
Do it later.
After the trial is done, he's convicted, sentenced, not convicted. I mean, hope to God that doesn't happen. But, I mean, the fact that they tore it down before the trial even started.
Nope. Like I said, juries sometimes want to do like an on-ground walkthrough, and nope.
And I think they should have been allowed to do that. Like, the fact that they're not even going to be able to have that chance, it just blows my. I was like, what the hell are you people doing?
Yeah, no, I saw that and I was like, no.
I know. I was like screaming at my computer screen, my TV, like, what the fuck are you people doing? Like, why?
Yeah. I get it. Again, I understand
100%,
the reasoning, but
yes. Right. I was just like, y'all are crazy.
I'm sure a part of it was, again, you have people there's people that are into true crime, and then there's people that take it to like next level. And I am sure it was boarded up, whatever, and you're gonna have the creeps, the true crime creeps, that are like, oh my gosh, I want to go in there and I want to lay on the floor and like do weird, creepy crap like that. Like, no. But I understand it probably became kind of like a circus like exhibit for the town, and I'm sure that got tiring. That's like the Watts house again. People would go and like look in the windows and leave stuff on the porch, and I get wanting to pay tribute.
That's another one that haunts me.
Yeah, like, let's not. Yeah, I know that one. Ugh. That's a case. People are always like, you should cover Chris Watts, and I'm like, you will never catch me covering Chris Watts, because one, some amazing creators have covered that. There's nothing more I can say. I mean, I can tell you that I hate the dude, and that I hope he's getting some good old fashioned prison justice. But the documentaries, the amount of documentaries that are out there about that, like, there's just nothing more I can add to it. Or, my opinion is just, it is what it is. I think everybody agrees with, how we all feel about it. So
yeah, that one is another one that just haunts me. Like, I just, I don't get it.
And that's another one that's very relatable too, because you have Shanann, who is just a working woman trying to, you know, build this MLM business. And like, that's again, relatable to people. I've done several different MLMs. I did LuLaRoe, I did Scentsy, you know, so Shanann is someone that I would be friends with. And like her and I would network together. Like that's just, so I felt that connection with her. Like I would definitely be friends with this girl. Chris would probably be friends with my husband. My boys would play with her. Like it's just, I don't know. I was so drawn into that case. That one was
I was too. Yeah.
A wild one.
I mean, that's one that I literally would sit and cry over.
Yes.
Of the girls.
No, that one bothers me really bad.
I can't. And like hearing, I mean, you can almost hear in your own mind the girls saying what they supposedly said to the dad. And that just, and especially if you have kids and to hear, just think about your own kids saying something like that and you can hear it in your own head. It's like, how could you ever do something like that?
Nope.
I just will never make sense of it.
That one kills me. That's one that has kept me up before. There's not a lot that keeps me awake, but that one definitely was one that I was awake quite a bit for.
Yeah. So what would you say has probably been one of the hardest cases that you've ever covered in your show?
So the hardest case that I can say that I've ever covered, and I have to say, like, I'm a really empathetic person. Like I feel all the feels. But the case that has bothered me the most, and I hope I don't get choked up. Her name was, it's just awful. Sorry. Yeah. Her name was Ebony Simpson. And I haven't brought her story over to Crime with Holly, but it is, the way that she was killed is just awful. I think it's, if I remember it right, I think it was an Australian case. She was like a little girl just walking home from school. And the way that the guy, it was just random, just saw her, just decided that's the one. He definitely sexually assaulted her. But he killed her by hog tying her with her arms and bound behind her with her legs. And then he threw her in water. Oh my God. And I don't like to cry, but
I didn't mean to make you cry. Now I feel bad.
Oh, no. It's okay. That one I could not record without crying.
Yeah.
And so the audio in that one, which is now taken down, and I will probably eventually put it on my new one, but you can hear me crying. Like I probably recorded like a good chunk, like, I don't know, like there was 15 minutes of mess ups where I just could not say the words.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a ton of cases that have always bothered me, but that one was probably the one that like really destroyed me. And thankfully, you know, they caught him really fast. He was involved in the search for her. But that one just the way that he killed her, just like I couldn't imagine being tied up and then tossed in water, and then you have all these thoughts running through your head. Sorry, I didn't mean to cry.
No, you're fine. Fine. I didn't mean to make you cry. I'm sorry.
That one was just like one that, I mean, I've watched like funerals for people. They sometimes, you know, they have like the memorials and stuff, and listening to the families, like I cry over that, but like actually recording an episode and covering it, that one was like definitely the hardest.
Yeah.
As you can tell. But I mean, the missing persons cases are hard for me too, just because again, where's the answers?
Yeah.
I didn't expect to get emotional.
No, I'm sorry.
No. I'm sorry. I got choked up.
No, listen, I love that. That's part of it. That means you're a real person, and like this does affect you, you know, when you're doing it. And I think that's important for people to understand too. You know, like you record these and you talk about it on the weekly basis, you know, and sometimes I feel like people don't understand that, like, we take that stuff home, you know, like I see and I listen to people's stories, you know, and I have had people on that have been like you know, sexually assaulted, domestic abuse, addiction, recovery, traumas, day in and day out. I sit and I talk with people, and like, you know, I'm still friends with a lot of people that I've had on my show, and I still talk to people that I've had on my show. Like I'm in, you know, communication with people all the time. I've become good friends with a few people that I've had on, and I still talk with them. And it's like, and you become their support system sometimes
Yeah.
too, especially when you become friends with them. And it's like, it's hard for people to realize, like, oh, you just recorded a podcast and then you move on. Like, what
Yeah.
is it?
No.
It's like, no, these things stick with you, and you become friends with these people, and like these stories and these real life situations affect you, and
Yeah.
you lay down at night to try and go to sleep, and they just start rolling in, those thoughts and those things. They
Yeah.
roll in, and it's like sometimes you can't sleep at night because of the things that you do as your job and your hobby, whatever you want to call it. It's like, it's hard. It's really, really hard, but it's something that we love, and we do because we love it, and it's something that we're passionate about, and it's like, we're not going to stop just because it's hard.
Yeah, definitely. It can be hard, especially making friends. Like, I have previously done like a lot of interviews with families. Chance Engelbert's mom, like her and I will message sometime. I do want to do like a full interview with her on my podcast, my new one. But she'll, at any time I talk about Chance or share him on TikTok, she's messaging me, telling me, thank you, I appreciate you. And it means a lot to, I think, the families too, when you cover them. I'm interviewing a family next week for a missing persons case. They asked if they could be on the show, and I said, absolutely. Like, I actually just covered her case. I don't know if you saw it pop up, but it was the Bianca Carrasco case. I literally just had it up this past Monday for Missing Mondays. And yeah, no, I took it down because her sister messaged me and was like, hey, like, can I actually do an interview with you? And I'm like, sure, like, I'll take this down. We'll just redo it all, and you can tell the story from, your point of view and everything. So you definitely make friends with people, and you connect with them on a deeper level than just some random person on the internet. But
yeah, for sure. So yeah, like the Missing Mondays, it's one I told you a little, just a little about it before we started recording, but when I was in college, I had a girl that I went to college with go missing. Just out of the blue.
Was she
totally
found?
Out of nowhere. Not the way you want her to be found. Yeah. But yeah. It was August of 2011. She went missing. She was supposed to go to work the next day. She didn't show up. Her fiance went to her apartment. She wasn't there. I think her keys, phone, car, like everything was still at her apartment. She was just gone. Like, it was literally like she vanished into thin air. There were search parties done. I actually wanted to like go on. We went to college. Like, I went to a small art college in Cincinnati, Ohio. And she worked in the bookstore. So like, I didn't know her, but I knew of her. Like, I saw her so many times, like in the bookstore and stuff like that. She worked in the bookstore. And so I didn't know her, but like, I wanted to go on one of the search parties, like, so bad. I begged my fiance at the time.
Just to help any way that you can help.
Yeah. Actually, we were married at the time. So my husband and I had just had a baby previously the year before, and he was like, I can't let you do that, because what happens if you come across her? That's going to change you forever. I just can't let you do that. And he wouldn't let me go. He would not let me go. But search parties were done for a long time. I think someone in the community donated like 150, like the amount of money that was donated for reward was astronomical. But nothing was ever found. Her boyfriend even went on like Nancy Grace and talked with her. Did tons of interviews, all the things. And then in, I believe it was either April or June of 2013, her remains were found in Indiana. And then, nothing ever came of it. Like, there was just, nobody knew what happened.
So it's still unsolved?
And then last year, her fiance was arrested for it. 13 years later.
Oh my gosh.
13 years later, they arrested her fiance. They went back and searched his mom's house, found all kinds of stuff. Listen, the police department completely dropped the ball on this case. I mean,
Oh
just
no, I hate that.
completely dropped the ball. And they even went back and apparently found like dismemberment marks where he had tried to dismember her, all kinds of things. Yeah. I think she had a
That's
plastic bag over
awful.
her head when they found her remains. Yeah. And her remains were found within 10 minutes of his family farm. And I'm like, you guys never assumed it was him before that? Like, what? I mean, everybody knew it was him. Like, everybody knew
Yeah.
it was him. And it took him 13 years. I went to her memorial service. And I'm very like in touch with, like, I always say I'm very empathetic and empathic too. Like I very much pick up on people's feelings and their emotions and things like that. And when I went to her memorial service, I walked past him going into the high school auditorium, and I have never felt such a cold, eerie, just
Oh,
air come at me in my entire, to this day. I've never felt something like that in my life when I walked past him.
wow.
It was the most weird thing I've ever experienced. And I was like, what the hell was that? And then, you go into a memorial
Oh,
service and people talk about how much the person meant to them and memories they had, things like that, right? He gets up there and he's like, well, Caitlin and I were going to move to Colorado, and we were going to move in with one of my friends, and they weren't going to get along. So then eventually he would have moved out, and this, and like, I was just sitting there like, what are you talking about?
that's weird.
It
Yeah.
was so weird. And I left there and I got in my car and I called my mom and I said, he did it. I literally didn't even leave the parking lot. And I called my mom and I said, he did it. And she was like, what do you mean? And I said, I just know it. I feel it. He did it. And I've never
Oh,
shifted from
wow.
that. It was, I was like, he did it. And when they arrested him last year, I saw it pop up on Facebook on my phone. And I called my mom and could not breathe. I was in such like hyperventilating from crying. And I was like,
Yeah.
they arrested him. They arrested him. She was like, arrested who? Like she was like, what is happening right now? And I was like, they arrested him, Mom. Like they arrested Caitlin's boyfriend. And she was like, are you fucking serious? And I was like, yeah. I mean,
Wow.
it was crazy. So he was supposed to do trial June 18th or June 20th was his trial date. He took a plea
Okay.
deal and he got manslaughter. The most he can get for manslaughter is 3 years.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. 3 years.
No.
He's never had any trouble with the law. He's never been arrested for anything. So his
Oh my
sentencing
gosh.
date is July 18th. So I don't know what's going to happen.
That's insane. Oh,
But it's
her poor family.
Yeah, and I don't know, like the uproar from the community and her family and friends and just people like me that have followed it since the beginning and like knew
Yeah.
of her, like have there's a group on Facebook that has drafted up like a petition with signatures to send to the judge about how much crap that this is and all of that
Yeah,
kind
that's
of stuff.
insane. No.
But yeah, the max that he can face is 3 years in prison.
That's awful.
I mean, he got away with it for 13 years.
Yeah.
And now the most that he can get is 3 years. And the most wild thing about it is he ended up marrying her best friend and they had a kid together.
Oh no.
Mm-hmm.
So are they still together? She's supporting him through this?
Yep.
Oh wow.
Yep.
You're gonna have to send me her name. Like
It's Caitlin Markham.
Okay, I gotta look at this.
Fairfield, Ohio. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a crazy case.
Wild. Awful. Okay. Never heard of that one.
Yeah, you'll have to dig into it. And listen, if you want to do an episode on it, I'm sure you're more than welcome.
Yeah, I might have to.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
that is crazy.
It's pretty crazy. But yeah, July 18th is his sentencing date. So I'm gonna be like on Facebook refreshing, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Because
that's crazy.
It's wild. I'm like, how is this? And I feel like nobody ever really gets justice. People always talk about justice and what is justice and how do you get justice? And I feel like nobody ever really gets justice. Like they don't come back. You know,
Yeah,
if a
no, there
person's
really
life in
isn't.
prison,
Yeah.
there's no justice. There's just learning how to deal with what they're given.
Yep.
But this isn't even fair.
No, that's awful. Mm-mm.
Yeah. So it's insane.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that because I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, it's one that I've thought about like writing into different true crime podcasters to see
Yeah.
if they can cover. It's been covered before, but no, not one that's like, none of the like big true crime
Yeah.
podcasters have ever covered. It's been covered by like small ones, and I've
Mhm.
listened to them, and they just, in my opinion, they haven't really done it justice,
Yeah,
So I would love to see someone cover it and like really do it justice. But
yeah,
I think it's been hard too, because up until last year he was, nobody really knew anything about
yeah,
who or what or why or anything like that. So now that I think he's been arrested and we've kind of got somewhat of an ending, I think it would be easier to,
for sure.
to kind of cover it and
Yeah.
do that kind of thing. Is it hard for you to keep the, I feel like we kind of already covered, but is it hard to keep cases separate from like your life and the podcast?
Yes and no. I mean, I think kind of like what I said earlier, like it just makes me more aware. So I think like those things are always in the back of my mind. And so, but for the most part, like on my day-to-day life, I wouldn't say that like it interferes with what I'm doing, or how I'm parenting or being a wife or anything like that. It definitely has me more, suspicious of people. I'm constantly like, no, you can't go spend the night at so and so's house because I don't know their parents and, things like that. But I would say I do keep it pretty separate. I mean, there are times where, I get emotional if I think about stuff or I tell people about certain things, or there's times where like I dream about, certain things, or I'm awake thinking about, different cases. Cases with kids, I think, are the ones that really bother me the most just because
Yeah.
I'm a mom. So, but I keep it pretty separate, I feel, for the most part.
Yeah, yeah. And I know I asked you like what's been the hardest one. I had written down what's the most gruesome case you've ever covered. I don't know if I feel like that the same one that you answered a minute ago would be the same.
I'm trying to think. Well, gruesome. I have covered a lady that she was, and I can't remember where she was from, India, or she was from somewhere else. She ended up marrying a rich man coming over to the United States. They got divorced. She was working as, I think, like a stripper somewhere. She met another dude, and she ended up killing him and like cooking him. If you look
Nice.
up like I think her name is, I can't remember, Ima or something like that. If you Google the Thanksgiving cannibal, you'll find her.
Those are always wild to me.
Yeah, so it was definitely like a
People.
wild case like that. That was pretty gruesome, where she like cooked him and had like his stuff in the fridge and cook it in pots. And so gruesome wise, that was probably like the most gruesome. But if you listen to the podcast, like I try not to go in crazy, in-depth, details about like the gruesomeness of stuff, because one, they're real life people, and that's a lot to put out there. So I try and keep it kind of like on the surface level of information, because one, I don't think I could handle all of the nitty-gritty details myself, but other people can't handle it either.
Yeah.
But that one's definitely probably the gruesomest.
Yeah. I listened to one podcast, and I don't know if you're familiar with him or not, Sword and Scale.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I used to listen to him
Love
all the
him.
time. Mm-hmm.
I remember him. There was one that he covered. And for me, I think it's one of the only podcasts that I've ever sat and just cried with.
Oh.
It was a mom, and I think it was either twins or triplets, like newborns. I mean, they were only a couple months old, and this husband came in and tried to, I think she made it. I think she's still alive. He was military, and the dad was trying to move her out. Her dad was trying to move her out. he starts, unloading the gun on her. The dad hears it from outside, tries to, and of course, this is me picturing my dad doing this because that's just how my dad is. So I think that's what got to me too. The dad comes running in and he immediately shoots him and kills him. And she just like, the way he's describing this is just like gut wrenching. And because, his voice is very like deep and low and he's talking very slowly. So the way he's describing it is just awful. But he kills him almost immediately. And she's like screaming because it's her dad. And then he turns the gun on the infants.
No.
And yeah. Mm-hmm. And
he does a really good job. Yeah, he does a good job of telling stories that really like captivate you and like get you in the feels. I used to listen to him. I have to admit, I don't listen to podcasts really anymore.
Yeah.
Having your own and like the amount of research that I do, and I do when I research, I listen to a lot of what I do is I listen to like interviews with the family. And so like I'm watching things like Dateline or Crime Watch Daily just to kind of like get like the full overview. And then I like obviously do more in-depth research, but I listen to so much stuff when I'm working on a case that I'm like, I don't have time to listen to podcasts. And plus like if I do, it's not really true crime podcasts because I'm just like, I have had enough of true crime right now.
Yeah. But then the guy ended up killing himself. And I'm like, of course, friggin' coward, But the girl, I believe, made it. I think she survived and she tells her story all over. I can't remember. I want to say her name is Amanda, but for some reason that I don't know that that's right. I'll have to look it up and see. But yeah, that one really got to me because I can just, I feel like as he was saying it, I could imagine like my dad out front with his truck pulling up, running in, doing the whole thing. And it was just like, no, I can't. And then you talk about the cooking one. There was one that I listened to. This one's hilarious to me, but there was one I listened to. I don't remember the podcast, but these two gay men wanted to meet up, and one wanted to die, the other wanted to do the killing. It was like this whole like agreed upon setup. It was crazy. It was on this like forum where they like met each other, and it was like this whole thing. I think it was in Germany or somewhere overseas. So the one guy killed him and cut off his junk and tried to cook it and eat it, and he fed it to the other guy because he was still alive as it was happening.
No.
Yeah. I was just
like, wow,
what is wrong with this world? Like, where do we live? That's all I'll get.
That's
like, so much more to it. But he was like in the bathtub bleeding out, and he's trying to like feed him his junk. I was like, that he had cut off of the dude, and I was just like, what is wrong with this world we live in? Like,
no.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. It was wild. And then he like left him, went to work the next day, and somehow the police ended up in his home. I don't remember, but they like found him. I don't know. It was one of those that you're just like listening, like, what? It was just was crazy. Yeah, so I think the
sounds
guy
almost fake.
The guy got arrested. Like I looked it up because I thought that too. I was like, this just sounds not real. And I looked it up, and the guy got like arrested and charged and is in jail.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure it was Germany. Yeah.
That's crazy. Nope, never heard of that one either.
Yeah, like I wish I could remember the podcast it was on, but it was one of those ones that you just like randomly pick and you're like, all right, I'll listen to this. And
yeah.
Cutting it off and eating it. I was like, thank you.
No.
That's never gonna happen. No.
Yeah, no, hard pass.
Yeah, right. I mean, I can listen to a lot of things, but that one I was just like, it was almost like one of those bad car accident. Like you can't not listen. Like I couldn't stop.
Yeah, you have to know what happens at the end.
Like I gotta know what happens.
Yeah,
now.
no.
At the point where he's done cut it off. Like I gotta know what he does with it. I was like, oh my god,
wild.
Crazy. Yeah. So, what do you think your greatest accomplishment since starting?
I mean, probably the biggest thing that I never saw coming was being in an actual documentary and having, like, I was interviewed for an actual documentary that's on Tubi. So it's not a huge streaming service. I mean, it's a big streaming service, but like just being that, like I think that was kind of like one of those moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, that's really neat. But that, and just there's been several cases that I've received tips for that I've, passed them along to people. Not that I know if anything really came of it. So like, I don't know, it makes me feel like I'm making a difference.
Right.
And then just, having families of victims that I've covered or missing people that I've covered reach out, that, because I struggle with contacting victims' families. There's a lot of amazing podcasters out there that will reach out and do interviews and really get the families involved. And I love that. But I struggle with that because I never want to seem like I am prying into someone's like tragedy. And some people might agree with that and some people might disagree. I know that there are a lot of people that question like why you do true crime, and why you are, people say, monetizing off of people's tragedies and stuff like that. And I always come back with the same answer, that it's really a learning opportunity. It's awareness and everything else that you can provide with that. But I never want a family member to be like, oh my God, another creator is contacting me to rehash everything. So like I struggle with that. So when a family member catches wind that I have covered it and they share it on their own social medias, or they reach out and just like thank me or tell me that, hey, like you did a great job and did justice for, my loved one, and I appreciate you, sharing, that's probably like a really big rewarding moment for me. Like I said, Chancey Engelbert's mom has reached out on like many occasions and just been like, people like you are the reason my son is not forgotten. People like you are the reason why my son is still at the forefront of people's minds. And so that's, I guess, is really like a huge accomplishment, a huge compliment, and probably like the most rewarding, I would say, aside from, the cool stuff of being on a documentary and stuff like that. That was pretty cool. But I definitely feel like the connection with families is probably like the biggest perk.
Yeah, I think I would be like you. I think I would be hesitant to reach out because you don't want to offend them or, like you said, make them rehash that, because, losing a loved one, especially unexpectedly or tragically, like, anything like that, is gotta be just, I can't, like you said, I can't imagine going through something like that. So having to reach out to them, like, I would be terrified to have to reach out and be like, hey, wanna chat about it again? Because I feel like nobody wants to do that.
Yeah.
So I completely agree with you. Like, I feel like I would be
I always just worry. Like, yeah, I'm a worry wart. Like, I'm the type of person that's like, hey, can you watch my kids? But if you can't, like, it's okay. Don't feel bad saying no. Like, I just always worry about stuff. I'm an overthinker. And so probably, again, like it's all in my head where, people, and maybe there are some that are like, no, I don't want to do this, and I don't appreciate you covering it, kind of thing. But for the most part, like I've always had people, when I have reached out to them, been thankful, but it's very few and far between, just because I never ever want to make people feel uncomfortable or like I'm prying, or that I get some sort of gratification on hearing their tragedy, because that's not the case at all, because I don't.
Yeah.
So
that's, I mean, I feel like for mine, like I usually will reach out to people to ask if they want to share their story, but I feel like I'm always like, would you be interested in sharing your story on my podcast? It's never like, hey, you want to chat about your trauma? Like, so but and I've gotten some people that are like, like there's this one lady that I've talked with several times, and she can't share her story right now because it's in court for, like domestic violence and that sort of thing. It's going through the court systems, and she's like, as soon as it gets wrapped up, I would be more than willing, because her case is something that is just like, her videos on TikTok blow my mind of what she's been through. But she can't share it right now, legally. But, I've reached out to her several times. Like, are you still going through court? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, but, for me, I've, and especially like being brand new, you have to like reach out and ask people for those stories, people I feel like just aren't going to willingly want to share their traumatic experiences with you. But I approach it in a point where it's like, it's to raise awareness. It's to help other people know they're not alone. And that's really what it's all about for me. So, but listen, I've loved having you on. I think that, like I said,
thank you.
Yeah, like, listen, when you said yes, I totally fangirled and was like, what?
That blows my mind. That blows my mind.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Listen, I've loved having you on. I've loved having the conversation. I mean, true crime is something that obviously we've both been interested in for so long. So I could sit and talk about true crime theories and conspiracies and like the conversation with true crime could go on for hours and hours, I feel like. So it's totally just something that I could chat about all day.
I appreciate you inviting me on and allowing me to get emotional there for a minute and talk about, everything. I appreciate it so much. It's been fun. I love the opportunity just to kind of be someone else, like I'm the podcaster, but I also enjoy being able to tell like why I do things. Cause again, a lot of people are always like, oh, you're talking about people's traumas, why you do that. And so I love to be able to tell like my why on why I do it.
Yeah. I think it's important. I think people need to understand like why you're doing it. I think raising awareness for being aware, is also very important because a lot of people nowadays just live in their bubble, and it's like you need to pop your bubble and like realize that there's a world outside of what you think is your perfect little world, because there is evil, there are monsters, and there's scary people out there. And if you just live in this in your own little world, like you're going to be very susceptible to the scary things that you talk about every week.
Yep.
So, listen, I'm really happy you came on. So thanks for coming on. Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you all so much for tuning in to this week's episode. Make sure you hit the follow button on whatever listening platform you are using, and head over to my social media pages and give me a follow there as well. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and now TikTok at Creating Yourself Pod. And if you have a story you would like to share on this podcast, email me at creatingyourselfpod@gmail.com, or you can message me on any of my social media pages. Make sure and come back next Tuesday for a brand new episode. Hope you guys have a great week. Bye.